Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talking About Birds, the only Cardinal podcast more painful than being stabbed through the chest with 4 baseball bats. My name is Nate Heininger, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Ben Samorka.
Spoiler alert, geez.
And this week, we are going to be touching on the light amount of news that has happened over the last week, and most of all, talking about Battlefield Baseball, the 2003 Japanese horror comedy baseball film.
Koshien Stadium!
If you have an idea for the opening bit, tweet us at Talk About Birds. Ben, what a show we've got planned for you today.
Big show, Nate. Big show.
Big show. Real big show.
It's the Dead Week show.
Yeah, the really the beginning of the Dead Weeks shows, probably. Yeah. But we're starting off with a bang. But before we really get into the core of our content this week, I gotta know, how you feeling about your Christmas? Smooth, easy, relaxing for you, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, I luckily was a part of an event that happened, which was the great cancellation of flights over the biggest travel holiday in North America. So I spent, we were trying to do the math on this on the drive home. I think I spent a combined 32 hours, somewhere around 32 hours of traveling to spend 2.5 days in St. Louis. No, it was 3 days if you add the 2 halfies.
Sure.
So technically the vacation was longer than the travel.
There you go. You always want that. That's like a minimum thing that you want to accomplish on a vacation.
Yeah. I've done a quick and dirty trip for like a wedding or a funeral or a fantasy baseball draft, but for Christmas,
all equal importance, by the way. Thank you.
It was a little bit. It was a little bit of a mess. I'm sure somebody who's listening to this was affected, but I think it was like they're still canceling flights, and it's like the storm's gone. It started snowing here again, but I mean, what a nightmare. Like Mary and I were having conversations about, okay, how do we use the rest of our remaining Southwest points? We're going to transfer over to something else. We've been dipping our toes in Delta. They have the Sky Lounge,
wow,
or the Diamond Club or whatever it's called. Maybe
it's medallion status or whatever.
Get the hell out of here. Yeah. So yeah, no, other than that, it was great. I made it in time to see your face, your lovely wife's face, the kiddos, my family, all that. So that was good. And my stocking is so full of goodies right now. What a blessed life I live.
Wow. Yeah, it was great to have you, of course. And I know that was a stressful situation, but at least you're back. I'm sure there are people still just like camped out at Lambert. It's all over the news here about the like the Southwest Terminal apparently is still like trashed at Lambert.
Hey, and this is like, I'm rooting for Team Chaos at this point. Like, burn it down. Like, I like, my experience was bad, but I know obviously.
So everyone else's should be too.
What I mean is that they should revolt, and we'll see. Like, I'm curious to see. We got $250 credit for the first failed flight. We'll see what happens to the second failed flight. But if it's anything less than $50,000, I say off with their heads.
Yeah. Dude, we should eat the rich and eat their planes.
Mr. and Mrs. Southwest, I'm going to be knocking on your door. This is a threat.
There was that guy who ate a plane. You ever hear about this?
Yeah.
You ever hear about this?
I have. I think it's bullshit, though. I don't believe it.
You don't believe it? I think it's true.
I think he's a charlatan.
What a weird ruse.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Why would you do that? It's almost like he didn't. I think I'm going to posit this right now. I think a guy lost a plane and then was like, okay, how do I spin this? Never take an L.
Take an L.
Now he's on the local rag, and the local rag gets picked up by national, and here we are talking about it.
Here we are. You know what?
I think he'd lost it.
This is the kind of conspiracy theory I can get behind. Where's the plane, Dan? I don't know his name, but
Is this where the pod takes that hard turn?
yeah, well,
Okay.
we've been looking to, dip into conspiracy. It's so hot right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're doing true crime, we're
Yep.
doing conspiracy. We got everything on this show.
Yeah. Baseball aliens.
Well, we've got a little
Baseball zombies, Nate. Baseball zombies.
we got cyborg baseball people, we've got robot baseball people, which there is a difference, and I appreciated the movie's attention to detail there. And we got zombie baseball people, so we're right there.
I never thought, and we'll get to this later, but I never thought while recording for this podcast, I would write down a note on my phone that says "Gorilla is a RoboCop?" ? And if you didn't watch the movie, we'll get into that later. But Gorilla is a RoboCop?
Yeah,
that happened.
Although I don't think he was a cop, but anyway.
Well, in my childish eye, RoboCop.
Not all robots are cops. All cops are robots, but not all robots are cops. Everyone knows this.
Sure.
So that's really gonna probably be the big chunk of this episode, is us talking about Battlefield Baseball. But we do have a little bit to talk about around the Cardinals before we jump into that.
Yeah, and I just want to say again, if for some reason you're like, "Oh, I got to watch this movie before they talk about it," it is the YouTube. The entire movie is dubbed in English and on YouTube in a fairly decent quality for being what it is. And it is on our Twitter feed, so you can go look at our Twitter and watch the movie there. It's like 80 something minutes. You can watch it. It might be shorter than this episode is. We'll see what happens.
Very likely.
But go check it out there if you
anyway.
want to watch it before we get there. But yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Which I would say, highly recommend that you do. So
Yes.
let's get into what little Cardinal and Cardinal related news that we have to talk about. We're gonna do that. We're gonna talk about what we can. That's Cardinals. We're gonna do a little break, and then we're gonna come back, and we're gonna talk about Battlefield Baseball, and then what's going on around the rest of the league. So, Ben, what do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, well, I think so there hasn't been a Cardinals transaction, any type of transaction since Wilson Contreras. So again, we're talking about dead week, dead month. That's all fine. There are a couple of things percolating right now, and like, I don't know about you, but I feel like this is the craziest 10-day period of transactional happenings in MLB around around the holidays. I feel like it's busier than you would think, than you expect. So, anyways, there have been multiple reports that Chris Sale is on the market, which makes sense in the sense that the Red Sox plan forward is completely opaque to me. I do not understand what this team is doing. I think Chaim Bloom is doing a bad job. I think John Henry's asleep at the wheel. I do not get it. Irrelevant, though. Chris Sale on the market. This is a guy who has, in his career, he has the highest K per 9 qualified for his innings pitched. It's like 11-1 or 11-5 or something like that. Something very impressive. And I mean, this is arguably like we've talked about the Cardinals should shop at the top of the pitching market, right? And I don't think that Chris Sale and Carlos Rodon are the same pitcher by any means, but there are a lot of similarities. Now, Chris Sale's health issues are more recent and potentially more problematic. But prior to that, he was like the picture of health and effectiveness. So all this to say, the Cardinals are being connected very lightly. And I want to hear what your thoughts are on if that is something that would make sense. I can't imagine because of his health track record that he's going to be too prospect heavy to acquire. And I think he's owed 27 mil for the next 2 years. And there's some type of option and he's got all these performance escalators, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, 27.5, 2 years of Chris Sale. What do you think? Is this a road the Cardinals should be walking down?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this, and I think first of all, from my understanding of the rumor, is that they've never said Chris Sale specifically is available, rather that they see starting pitching as depth, and so then everybody has then jumped to say, oh, well, then that means they're willing to listen on Chris Sale, which I'm not trying to be pedantic here. I do think there's a key difference between an organization saying like we would like to move this guy and them saying we're open to hearing offers on our starting pitching, right? So it makes
Wait,
me think that his asking price is going to be higher because they're not specifically looking to move him for like a salary dump or like something like that.
but is that true? Because they seem to be
Fair.
very stingy with their pocketbooks recently. And like I'm
Yeah.
looking at their rotation right now, and they have Pavetta coming back, Waka, Hill, Eovaldi are all on their way out. This trade would have Chris Sale on their way out. And then you're relying on Cutter Crawford and Josh Winkowski and Garrett Whitlock, I guess. I don't know. Tanner
Yeah.
Houck.
They do.
I mean, that line or that rotation is nothing to me. But
Well, I didn't say that they actually have
yeah,
starting pitching depth, but apparently that's what they have stated.
yeah,
And
they
to your
cannot
to your
evaluate their
point,
own players. Yeah,
yeah, Hein Bloom seems bad. So they don't actually have rotation depth, but from their perspective, they do. So, but that's all kind of aside. I guess I'm just like kind of laying a foundation to say like I really would be surprised if he gets traded, let alone to the
yeah,
Cardinals. But let's all that aside, should the Cardinals try to acquire Chris Sale? My answer is yes. I think he is, as you said. I mean, up until 21 and 22, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball. Um, Hall of Fame track, all the stuff you want, incredible K per nine. And then he has had two god awful years as far as
yeah,
health goes. 42 innings pitched in 2021, 5 innings pitched in 2022.
yeah,
And of course, you have to consider how much do the Cardinals like their locker rooms and their clubhouses because he has at least one on his record book of having trashed. So I don't know if you
yeah.
remember that story from last
He,
year.
yeah, he was in a minor league stadium on a rehab start and ripped a like a medicine cabinet off the wall or something like
He
that.
trashed the whole thing. He broke a
Trashed
bunch
the
of
whole thing.
TVs. Like there's that really uncomfortable video of him just going full Matsui gorilla mode on it and like tearing everything down. And
Yeah. Well, and
it's
his famous clipping up the alternative White Sox jersey with
oh
scissors.
yeah. Yeah.
That was many years ago, and they couldn't start the game because he
Yeah.
chopped up his jersey.
So it's maybe a bit of a hothead,
Maybe.
but I think like well what I've been saying this whole time and what you've been saying as well is that like the only players that really make sense for the Cardinals to acquire are extreme upside plays because we don't need to add floor. The whole team is floor. So why not take a swing at a guy coming off of multiple injuries? I think one of them then he broke his hand punching something like so it could come back or he could recover without a
Yeah,
problem. But
I kind
um
of remember that, but
I could be wrong. I feel like he had two injuries last year. One of them was a normal injury and one of them was more self
yeah,
afflicted. But I could be wrong on that. But either way, like he's getting older. What'll he be? 34. So he's four
yeah,
years older than Rodon and would be making the same as Rodon. But the Cardinals obviously have the money. They could double their payroll and still be fine. So I think it makes sense. Ultimately, I would come down to what the cost is. Like in a vacuum, would I like Chris Sale on the Cardinals? Yes. I
yeah,
think the risk reward is worth it. Um, assuming the risk isn't a massive package, which I do agree. I have to imagine it'd be pretty low. It would probably come down to how much money you're going to take from the Red Sox.
yeah,
If you're going to just flat take the whole contract, I imagine the prospect cost would be pretty low. But I assume that the Cardinals would want the Red Sox to at least keep some of that contract. So you're probably looking at a couple good pieces going to the
sure.
Red Sox. But the Cardinals have a lot of depth, a lot of minor league depth right now that a team like the Red Sox, who need everything, could benefit from. It just depends on what are they looking for, major league talent? Because I don't know, I could throw in like a Yepes or something like that.
Yeah.
We got a lot of guys like that right now. But if they're looking for some of the pieces that were involved in trade talks, like for Sean Murphy and these other guys, if they think they're getting like a Gorman or a Carlson, I don't think that happens.
No, and I don't think if they get a top 100 prospect for Chris Sale, I think I'd be pretty shocked. Unless Boston eats 100% of the salary. That would be the
Yeah.
only way I see anything like that
Well,
happening.
I don't know his current health either. Like, is he
Yeah.
considered starting spring as a normal starter? Because that also would play a part into it,
Yeah.
But either even if he's considered fully healthy, you really can't expect. Like, I'd be hoping for 100 innings of good Chris Sale in 2023,
Yeah.
and whether that comes in a whole bunch of 5 inning starts or like a half a season of regular starts. I don't know. But I have a hard time banking on a full season after the last two he just had. Not only just from risk of injury, but just from the standard way pitchers, stretch out their arm and they need that sort of bulk to the build up and the
Yeah.
year after year and whatnot. So I don't know. I mean, so ultimately, like I said, I'm for it. What do you feel?
Yeah, I think I'm here for it. I think that it's like, they've been worried about Chris Sale breaking down since he came up when he was a closer for the White Sox because he's, got the Jack Skellington body and he throws 97 and his herky jerky motion and all that. And I don't really buy into that. I think players make it work for them. Like Max Scherzer is a great example of that. So yeah, I think I'd be down for it. I think the Cardinals would be a very smart and shrewd and Mosaic-Lockian move to kind of not necessarily fleece, but give a little, take on the full salary. We've talked about how much money is coming off the books after next year. You would only have to really have a larger salary for 1 year. And then you can have Chris Sale next year, assuming health. So yeah, I think it makes all the sense. And this is like we've said 18 times now, this is exactly the type of move. Like it's we give the Cardinals trouble for kind of wishing for the best outcome. But if you get a Chris Sale, I am pretty happy. Like the best outcome for Chris Sale, the 90th percentile is like a Cy Young candidate.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and the middle version of that is like you're saying, a guy that throws most of half of an inning or a season, hopefully more than half an inning, most of half of a season, and is probably pretty productive when he's out there. Because like he's also like Chris Sale is that guy. I think even at diminished health, when he's coming out from that crazy angle, that slider is still good. The fastball is a little bit less. Like he's just going to be effective until he can't do it. Like almost like Randy Johnson. He is like Randy Johnson esque in that way, where it's coming out, 6 feet to the side of the mound and everything. So yeah, I like it. I think it'd be a ton of fun. I think that he is kind of annoying as a human being,
Yeah.
but I like everything else that he brings up. So yeah, I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's a significant change to the team if he is the Chris Sale
Yeah,
that he was for 7 years before the
yeah.
last two. So, we'll see.
Hundo P. Moving along, Carlos Correa, as we are recording on Tuesday night or on Wednesday night, geez, forgetting where I'm at. He is still unsigned. He is with the Mets. I think if I had to bet, like this isn't how bets work, but if I had to bet, I feel like it's like a 30% chance he's a Met, like a 20% chance he's a Giant. And then everything else, I would go to the rest of the league because I have no idea what is happening. And the fact that two teams have basically balked on his medicals is really, really strange. Um, I don't know what to say. I guess, like, obviously, we don't know what the medical issue is, and we may never know. But all like to kind of filter that through our Cardinals' brains, there's a non-zero chance he takes another small deal while this is figured out. I don't know. I think he will sign with the team. Carlos Correa is not done. I don't know if it's going to be with the Mets. I don't know if he's going to negotiate. I don't know what that's going to look like. Do you have any thoughts or feeling like should the Cardinals be swooping in? I don't think this is a Cardinals type move. Um, But is this a time where the Cardinals should show up with $40 million, or is this a time to just rock with the shortstop that you have?
So my take on it, because this has definitely been the biggest story in baseball over the last
Yeah.
week, since we've been recording or since our last record. And I think that what's probably happening is because he's been incredible. He's been generally healthy and very good the last 2 years. So these teams aren't really concerned about 2023, probably 2024, 2025. There's something that is grinding to halt this like mega contract, right?
Yeah.
And if now two teams have basically made that same declaration, it's done. He's not going and getting another 10,
Yeah.
11, 12, 13-year deal from anyone. The Giants and the Mets have, uncovered something. I
Yeah.
read one reported something with his leg. There's
Yeah.
clearly some concern about his longevity. They don't want to do these massive contracts. But I think your percentage is way low on the Mets because Steve Cohen, like now he's one of those egotistical, maniacs.
Yeah.
He kind of screwed himself already by announcing the deal before it was official, which
Right.
might cost him money unless he can just figure it out and get a deal done with Correa. I'm expecting it's going to be a significantly reduced deal as far as time, but probably not as much on the AAV. He's going to get like six, like 180 or something
Yeah.
like that, and then so he gets mega paid and these teams get him through his prime, and then whatever that medical issue is, maybe it's resolved, maybe there, something is resolved and he gets another deal, or like maybe his leg pops off like a
Yeah. That's definitely what's
90s
going to be. Yeah.
90s crash test dummy,
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my guess. I think it's still
Yeah.
the Mets. I think Steve Cohen's all in and he's shown the willingness to pay whatever has to be paid. I would love it if the Cardinals could come in and drop, 280 and we just have
Yeah.
Correa, at shortstop for the next 2 years, and we say thank you
Yeah.
for your service. These rings are wonderful. You shouldn't have cheated in 2017, but we've all forgotten about it because now we won World Series.
Yeah.
And we move on. But no, I think it's the Mets,
Yeah.
and I would be very, very surprised if it's anything otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I don't think I have anything to add to that. Let's move on. I want to talk about there's a couple of players who are either been made available or are still available that I wanted us to kind of run through. Two of the players, I'm calling this bargain hunting because they were just DFA'd from their current teams. Tommy La Stella just got DFA'd from the Giants, and Mike Moustakas just got released from the Reds. They haven't had amazing performance recently. They are both left-handed hitters that hit the ball quite hard when healthy and everything's going. And presumably they could be had for almost nothing. Do you have any? Do you like either of these guys? Do you think we should bring either of them into the fold? I think while you're thinking about that, I think I don't know. If I was to place like a $3 million bet on Tommy La Stella, I think that I would be happy with that. He's a guy that can like hit right-handed pitching and hit it hard when he's healthy, which has been a while. And he can't really do much other than else. He can't really play in the field. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Pass.
Pass,
I'm
pass. All
good.
right.
I'm good on both of them. Mike Moustakas. Let's see. Last year's 76
Moose Moose.
Moose Tacos. I got it. 76 WRC plus. Year before 69. Nice. Tommy La
Nice.
Stella. He had a 78 WRC plus last year, 93 the year before. A couple good years before that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
He was a valuable player for a short time. I just don't know what you're getting with
Yeah.
guys like that. Like what you're really hoping for the perfect bounce back year, and just let's give it to the kids.
Sure.
Do we need a 35-year-old Moose Taco on this team? Like,
Yeah.
no, I don't think so.
No, I think you're probably right.
Was
I
Tommy La Stella the one who said uh, if I don't get to play for the Cubs, I'm gonna quit baseball. And then
Gonna
he got
retire.
traded or whatever, and he is still playing
He
baseball.
got traded to the A's, had a great year, and signed a nice
Yeah.
contract with the Giants. And wow, that wasn't true.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was emotional. It's okay to be emotional.
I get it, and it's the fans
Not
love to
all
hear it.
people are
So
like you and just walk through this life as a RoboCop himself and just analyze the situation. I like
more,
this. Give me money.
I'm at least more of a cyborg. Come on, give me a little bit of a little credit here.
Is
Um,
is that better?
well, cyborg. So a cyborg
No, no, no. I
is
understand.
part human and part robot. Okay,
Yeah.
and a robot is just robot,
Yes.
metal all the way down.
I
Right,
understand. But I don't
gizmos
understand
and
how
what?
one is inherently better than the other.
Do cyborgs have souls?
What a great question. Maybe we could watch Blade Runner for our next film.
I was gonna say we need Philip K. Dick around here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One other person I wanted to throw out, and I'm gonna say he's a bargain just because he's still available and he's kind of got a
Yeah,
weird profile. But Jerkson Profar, I was thinking about him over this past week since we recorded last, and he kind of fits what the Cardinals are trying to do. I mean, he can play in the infield, he can play in the outfield. He's a switch hitter, but a lefty bat. He walks a bunch. He hits the ball hard. I don't know. I think he's 28 or 29. What are your thoughts on the Cardinals going after Profar?
well, first of all, Profar always makes me sad
Yeah,
because it makes me think of, if you remember that time when him and Oscar Taveras were number one and
yeah,
number two prospects in baseball, and there was a lot of talk about the Cardinals and the Rangers should just trade them for each other because it fit the team needs a lot
right.
better. Like Cardinals needed a Profar and the Rangers needed a Taveras. Obviously, something like that never happens, and we all know what happened after that.
Yeah,
But just Profar, if for whatever reason, it's like the weird trauma brain thing. But when I see
yeah,
Profar, every time I think of Oscar Taveras, which makes me sad every time. So anyway, I'm actually more supportive of this one. He had a pretty good year last year, and he can kind of play all over the place. As you already talked about his batting profile. This is sort of a lift the floor move. You're
yeah,
probably not getting like a crazy sudden breakout year from Profar. I think he kind of is what he is. Like last year was one of his better years anyway. I mean, maybe he's on the upswing, but that's generally not how these things work. But I mean, he's good. He was good
yeah,
last year. There will be injuries. Like I think we've talked about a lot of guys on over this offseason on like would they fit with the Cardinals, and I've generally said no the vast majority of the time.
yeah, yeah,
But Profar makes a little bit more sense to me because of that versatility. He's got some pop, he's got some speed, he can hit both sides. Like if you're gonna get a guy like this sort of like, we're not necessarily going to have a starting position for him, but we expect him to play a lot. I like a Profar.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think there's value of having what would be in this situation two super utility players on the roster, flexibility, health, issues, all that. And again, he can hit the ball a little bit, left hand side. I like all that. All right, that's all I wanted to talk about. That's all the real baseball news we have. I think we're in agreement here. Let's go get Chris Sale and Jerkson Profar, and at least augment the roster slightly more before the season starts.
yeah. Chris Sale, absolutely. And
Yeah.
if Profar doesn't, it probably won't happen. Both of these probably won't happen, but
No, I would
you
be
know,
surprised. Yeah.
so we're doing things in a little bit different order on this episode because of the type of content that we're doing this week. So now a little earlier than normal, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can support this show. If you love the show, we are coming up on our completing our first full year of doing this. I know that feels
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
We're getting close to episode 50. And if you enjoy the show, want to continue to see it grow, and just support people directly, consider joining our Patreon. It's patreon.com/talking about birds. Patrons of any level get access to our private Discord. That is what we call the Bird Scored. It's a
Tweet
great
tweet.
place. Tweet tweet. It's a great place to chat with other Cardinal fans around the world, and we're in there a lot. Breaking news, people just talking about random things. It's a lot of fun. Kind of far less noise than probably the other ways that you're going online to talk about the Cardinals, and it's a great place. So we have a bunch of different tiers and whatnot, but really anybody, any level, come in, join the Bird Score, be a part of the conversation. We'd love to have you. You can also consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That really helps us show up when people search for, um, Cardinal podcasts and things like that. So, if you're not following us online, we try to be pretty active on there as well. Ben, where can people find us online?
Yeah, you can follow us on the socials at Talk About Birds on Twitter. On Instagram, you can follow us at Talking About Birds. And as always, you can email us questions, thoughts, concerns, musings, whatever it might be, to talkaboutbirds at gmail.com. Normally, I make fun of Nate at this point, but I will say, had a couple of Nate H pizzas over this last weekend. And wow, they were pretty good. Chef's kiss. Is that what I'm supposed to
Mm.
say? What do you want me to say? Nate wrote this part
Um,
for me.
just Ben, stick to the script. You're
No,
going off. You're going off script.
it was very good. Email Nate. Maybe he'll make you a pizza. Maybe you can be so lucky. Outside of that, you can listen to us on Spotify. If for some reason you prefer listening there, we're there. We'll meet you where you are. That's the Talking About Birds guarantee. And yeah, outside of that, like if you have a friend that likes the Cardinals, show them our podcast. Just grab their phone and download it. And Twitter and all that is one thing, but I think word of mouth is probably more important than all that. If you like us for some reason, yeah,
Hopefully, this episode is a good gateway episode because we've got something entirely new to bring to the table here.
yeah,
Something that we've never really done before, at least in a like official capacity. I think movies in general is something that Ben and I have, had in common and bonded over through the course of our lives. And we talk about them all the time, but we've never done it into microphones before. So hopefully this is something that you enjoy. We certainly enjoyed watching this film. Once again, shout out to
yes,
famous Mortimer from the Bird Scored for
yes,
bringing this film to our attention. There are apparently, this may be one of the top of this sort of thing that's happening, but there are other films like this out there that I am really excited to watch. So if you enjoy this, let us know because we got a long off season to get
yeah.
ahead of. And Ben, I was already thinking like, I think every year we got to watch Battlefield Baseball and just talk about it every year because I feel like this movie has layers that we're only going to just get into.
Honestly, well, should we just get into it? Because I agree. I do think that this movie, or can we just get into it, Nate? Are we good?
Yeah,
Let's kick it off.
let's get into it.
Um, I will say this movie was I enjoyed it far more than I thought it. When I watched the trailer, I was like, okay, ha ha ha, this is going to be funny.
Yeah,
I am a fan of the quote unquote good bad movies like, Goblins 2, The Room,
yeah,
Birdemic,
same.
some of those like classic horrible, like it's so bad it's good type movies. And I was like, okay, that's what we're getting ourselves into here. This is a low budget horror comedy that might not make much sense. And I guess I would say probably, I actually think so. The reviews about this were this movie had no plot. I argue that. I think there's a very straight through plot. It makes a lot of like, it is A to B to C. And what I wanted was getting at is that I think this movie was better than I expected it to be, was funnier than I expected it to be, and like more engaging, I guess. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
when I started watching this movie, I watched this movie last night on the couch. And when I first had it, I was like, oh, I was kind of checking Twitter, kind of checking MLB trade rumors, kind of blah, blah, blah. And then there were some performances on the screen that were like made me lose my mind. And then there was a point where I was just locked into the movie. I was just excited to be here. And checking the time and being like, how are they going to wrap this up in the allotted time? Don't
yeah.
worry, They did.
They did.
Um, but I was very, very pleasantly surprised. I think this is going to like just creep into my life now. I think I love it.
I
I
think I
love
love it
Battlefield
too.
Baseball. Yeah.
I love it too. I'm so glad that we watched this movie. And yeah, as similarly as a fan of bad movies, that's what I was expecting as well. And I think the difference between those and this is that this movie knows that it's bad, if that makes sense. Like
Yes.
or rather, they're going for something that they know people are going to call bad, and they lean into it. Whereas
Yes.
like a Birdemic or The Room, or things in that ilk of good bad movies, wasn't those were generally earnest attempts at making good movies, and they just turned out to be horrible. This one is playing on a ton of tropes, and knows that it is stupid. And I think that's where the reviews of it that say there's no plot,
Yeah.
that's incorrect. I agree with you. There is a plot. It's a very clear plot, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But is it does it make sense? Is it consistent? Is there like logic behind the plot? No, not at all. And that's where people confuse no
Yeah.
plot with like bad plot, and bad,
Right.
not my word, but like there's a difference between no plot and like inconsistent plot and stuff like that. Because yeah, this is a very it's actually playing on sports movie tropes, like
Yeah.
the like kid who is bad at the sport but connects with the person who's really good at the sport, and they like come together to win a
Yeah.
championship, is like what this is playing on. But it's insane all the way through. So
Yeah.
why don't
And
we yeah, go on.
well, I was gonna say to start the movie, this is how I knew I was at least in the right place. But to start the movie, there's kind of a text across and again, this movie's Japanese. If we haven't made that clear, so it's dubbed. We watched the dubbed English version,
Well, hold
and
on.
it's
I watched the subtitle version. I
oh
didn't
sorry, no, I watched subtitled too, but I
Okay.
don't know why I said dubbed. No, it was
Yeah.
English subtitled. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't. I would generally prefer subtitles over a dub, but you kept saying English dub, and so I was thinking there was another version that I didn't find.
No, no, I'm just stupid. I think that I would actually say if there is a dub version, don't watch that because the original performances and the way in which lines are delivered must be preserved
Yeah.
because they are that good. So, anyways, it says, Japanese. It says this movie is dedicated to all those who love baseball. That's kind of like the cold open before you
Yep.
see anything at all. And immediately I was like, all right, we're here, this is going to be great. And then
We're
I mean the movie starts.
So we both independently took notes, and we're going to be
Yeah.
referring to those. And Ben, my first note, highlighted top, is this movie is dedicated to all who love baseball, because
Yeah.
that stood out to me too. So before we jump in a little bit about it, this movie came out in 2003. Battlefield Baseball. It is, as Ben has said, it is a Japanese film. It is based off of a manga of the same name, Battlefield Baseball.
Which we
So
need to get our hands on.
I know it makes me want to find the manga. So this actually has a source material. This isn't
Which
just
is insane.
yeah, it's wonderful. So we're gonna try to go through the plot. We're gonna try to
Yeah.
touch the major points of the plot and talk about like what we liked and where it maybe struggled a little bit. And we'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna kick it off, and then Ben and I are gonna try to go back and forth a little bit as we go
Yeah.
through this movie. So, as Ben said, the movie opens up with the that text on the screen, and then you get a horrible slow scan across a baseball field just riddled with dead bodies, like skulls on pikes and stuff, which is
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like immediately I was like, "Oh, this movie is way more violent than I thought it was going to be," because they were just body parts.
Yeah, like heads, like clearly wax heads, but human heads, and like grotesque
Yes.
faces, like on little spikes stuck into home plate and whatnot. It was great. Now, you said this movie's more violent than you thought. yes and no, because also almost all violence happens off screen on this movie, which I think
Well,
is an element of the budget, because
yeah, the budget was small.
you almost never actually see anything, which is also, I think, part of the fun and funniness of this movie, and makes it
Yeah.
probably more watchable for a lot of people, because you just see the end results of a lot of the battle, and it's horrible, bodies and blood everywhere, but you see
Like,
like none of the actual happening of
yeah.
it. But
So
but anyway,
so speak to contradict you immediately. So that is largely true, but in this opening scene, like you're saying, it's kind of panning across the field, and then it cuts to another scene that seems to be completely incongruent of where we were earlier, and it is what appears to be a normal baseball game, and the batter hits it. The guy is, I think it's the center fielder or something. He's running back and he leaps superhuman levels into the sky to catch the baseball. And as he closes his glove on the baseball in the outfield to make the catch, it explodes, killing him, throwing
yeah,
his body parts everywhere.
yeah,
And then I think, is that what wakes up our the principal, I guess, or
yes,
principal of the high school. So that explosion in his dream, which we learn is his dream,
yeah.
wakes up the principal of, is it Saido's high
Saito.
school,
Yeah,
and we meet the principal and head coach.
and head coach, yeah, of the baseball team for Saito High, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And he basically he wakes up, in a sweat, but then um he goes and looks out the window, and I love this scene because he's basically saying that we are going to finally win the championship. I'm going to take this team pro, and I'm going to do it because I've got this guy. And he's like looking through
Yeah.
binoculars through the window, and that's where
Yes.
we meet Matsui Gori, who everyone calls Gorilla, which is great. And he's this
Yes.
big hulking dude, and I love it because the principal is like, "We're gonna win because we have this guy. He hits a home run every hit." And then he's moves over, and he's like, "Also, we have this guy who
Yeah.
has a 600 batting average. Also, we
Yes.
have this guy who throws the ball 90 miles per hour, and also we have this guy who steals bases 99% of the time." It's like, yeah, that's a pretty damn good baseball team. And then he goes,
Also,
he makes a
oh, sorry.
pledge. He makes a pledge to the to like a poster on the wall, and he bows to it. There's a ton of
Yes.
Japanese tropes in this where he bows to like the trophy on the wall and says, "I will win a championship. I will take this team to the next level."
I just thought that was so funny too. The pointing out this guy hits 600, which is obviously like an unbelievably high average. This guy steals bases 99% of the time. This guy throws 90 miles per hour, which is
Well, it's
like
high school,
Adam Wainwright. I
but
know, but well,
it's high
yeah,
school.
but
That's the way
still.
I tried to. I actually thought it was interesting that they did that, because yeah, I would have expected them to say like he throws 102 or whatever, but it's
Yeah.
also 2003.
Right.
So a like 17-year-old throwing 90 in 2003 would be insane.
It is.
Um
And
but
I'd
yeah.
also want to, like, they cut to Matsui Gorilla, he's kind of given this guy trouble. They are doing fungos on the field, and Matsui looks like he's 40 years
40,
old,
40, yeah, I think he's
conservatively.
balding.
Yeah, I mean, he is a man, and he is, I guess he's been on the team for more than 1 year at least, so he is
Yeah.
playing
Yeah,
at least
he's
17 or
huge.
18. Yeah.
Yeah.
And his
Also,
voice, like, he just looks like a man. Yeah, it's
yeah,
ridiculous.
the
Yeah.
guy, there's a ton of funny little sound effects in this movie. The guy, when he's going back to catch the ball, you're just hearing like which reminded me a lot of myself. So it's good to be represented in a movie. So that
The
scene with
Foley
Matt's,
work on this movie
yeah,
was top tier, yeah.
there's fart noises.
All
Like
over the place, yeah.
people fall over and fart all the time, which,
Right.
I mean, come on. So Matsui Gori, Gorilla, he's out there doing batting practice, and that's when we meet one of the protagonists of the film, Four Eyes. and that's all we ever know him by, is he's got glasses, he's
Yeah.
skinny, seems really incompetent.
It's a
Um,
term of endearment, I think, sort of.
yeah, well, it becomes that. I mean, at the
Yeah.
beginning, it really feels like he's being bullied by
Yeah.
Gorilla. So on the one side, you've got Gorilla, this hulking doof who, seems to be mean. And on the other side, you've got this like skinny guy who can't really do sports, which actually reminded me a lot of you and I. So I thought, it's good to have ourselves,
I
um,
honestly, Gorilla and Four Eyes might be the new name of the podcast. That's probably a better name.
that might be Gorilla and Four Eyes.
Yeah.
So they're playing, and Gorilla hits a ball over the fence, and he makes Four Eyes go and get it, and he has to go to where the dropouts hang out, which is funny because it's just the other side of the fence from the baseball field.
It's just the other side of the fence, but there are like dead body
There's
parts
body, yeah.
again.
There's more
Just like
bodies.
there's like a head on a stake
There's
behind the
another
school.
lot of heads on stakes,
Yeah.
just right on the other side of the fence. So he goes
Yeah.
back there, and there's an awesome, like, 80s looking punk who he gets in a fight with, and we get a little bit of like martial arts tropey stuff, where the guy, it's like he gets punched and goes flying back like 15 feet.
Well,
Um,
what happened to that home run ball hit this vampire punk whatever in the teeth, and he goes, "You broke my teeth. You owe me $5,000. No, 5 million." And then starts, yeah, like kicking him around and all that.
yeah,
Um, and this
it,
guy's hairdo, best
it's
hairdo in the
wonderful.
movie, easy,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's wonderful. So meanwhile, while he's getting his ass kicked, while Four Eyes is getting his ass kicked, um, we go back to the principal, and the principal, who's all super hyped on winning the championship, learns that the first matchup that they have to play is against Gato or Ghetto,
Ito,
Gedo,
yeah,
Gedo High, another high school,
yeah.
and him and his like first head teacher, I
Head
think it
teacher,
is,
yeah,
head
head teacher,
teacher,
yeah,
just burst into tears because Guido High is notorious. They play a different type
yeah,
of baseball, and no one survives. Guido
right.
High will kill everybody on the other team, and it's legal because it's in the game, which
That is
is,
all they explain it. They don't
is
they all they establish that you can kill somebody on the baseball field, and not only are the umpires fine with it, but the law is
everybody's
fine
fine
with
with
it.
it. And
It is how the game is played. But
yeah,
then they also kind of allude to the fact that the principal has played Guido High in the past, and he somehow knows this is how they play. There's some allusions to that that don't totally line
I have
up or
to
make
imagine it's
sense.
just notorious. If this
Right.
team is killing every team they play, like,
That makes the news. Yeah.
you know about it,
Yeah.
especially if you are also a baseball team who could get
Yeah.
matched up against them. And so they're like, "Oh shit, I guess we're gonna sit out this year because we don't want to play Guido High and all of us get killed." And
Right.
so they're pissed. And then they hear about a fight happening. So they're like, which was really funny. They were really worried about the fight because there's a baseball player involved in it, which is Four Eyes. And they're worried that if news gets out that a baseball player was involved in the fight, they'd get suspended from baseball for the year. But I'm
Yes.
like, that's what you wanted. You don't
Yes.
want to play Guido High. This is your out. Let him get
Right.
suspended, and then you don't have to play Guido High. But anyway, I I will explode if I try to if we try to call
Yeah.
out the stuff that doesn't make any sense in this movie. But that stood
And
out to me because I
also
was like, this is your out.
also upon hearing this, he says, I know how to help." And he grabs a samurai sword off of his wall to break up a student
A student
level
fight.
fight,
Yeah,
which made
it's
me so
awesome.
happy.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So we go back to the fight with Four Eyes, and there is like he's like hanging upside down
Like
also
a
in the
bat.
like a bat in the
He's hanging
dropout
like a bat. Yeah.
area, and that's where we
Yeah.
meet Jubei. Jubei falls from the ceiling, lands like a badass, and rescues Four Eyes. Um, and Four Eye, I mean, he's so. Let's talk about Jubei for a second.
The coolest
Long,
dude.
coolest
Yes.
guy in the town, like
Yes.
long,
Sex on a
flowing black
stick. Yeah.
hair. He wears a long black jacket with a white t-shirt under it, black pants, just like a badass. And this guy was in
Yeah.
other Japanese films too. He's like the star of the film and I think was known for things. So this is like the get of the film for these
Yeah.
creators. And he breaks up the fight and um
He
uh
decimates the gang. The
yeah.
the the dropout gang or the bad boy gang or whatever it is.
Well, him and Bancho,
Bancho.
the bad boy
Yeah.
gang, the dropout gang, he crushes him, and then him and Bancho, the head of the dropout gang, get in a baseball fight, which is
Yeah, that is exactly the note that I wrote down.
yeah,
They get into a baseball fight.
Bancho has a bat, and Jubei runs at him,
Yes.
and Bancho swings and Jubei does some feat of acrobatics to make it miss. And everyone in the crowd was like, strike one. And then he turns around and he does another, like they do the whole thing where
Yeah.
Bancho's like winding up, he's like tapping the plate, he's putting his hands, he's like in a batting stance. Jubei goes and jumps over him and does like 3 front flips or whatever.
He's
Strike
just running at
2.
him though. Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally on strike 3, after Bancho misses, he pummels him and kills him. And everybody loses their mind because now everyone is there watching and everyone's cheering for Jubei. And Four Eyes is like, oh my God, you've got to come and join our baseball team.
If you can beat
We
this
need you.
guy up, you must be a great baseball
You
player.
must be a great baseball player. You just
Yes.
won a baseball fight.
Yes.
You've got to be a great baseball player. And that's when we get a little bit of
Well,
Jubei's backstory.
I also want to point out really quick before we get in when he punches Bancho, all of Bancho's clothes fly off and
Oh,
he goes
yeah.
flying into the distance, basically naked.
Yeah. Yeah, he kicks his ass. Yeah, it's like a single punch too, just strips all his
Yes.
clothes off.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's awesome. And then this is the moment when this whole movie clicked into place for
Could
me.
not agree more with you. Yeah.
Because I certainly didn't know it was a musical. Did you know it was a
I did
musical?
not.
And Jubei starts singing from an
Yes.
actor who I have to believe is not very comfortable singing because the
Yes.
whole thing is sung in a tone that is really quiet and the whole thing is really quiet. And we learn about Jubei. He used to play baseball, but he
Yes.
doesn't anymore. He's given it up. Is it then that we learn he killed his dad, or is it late?
The way the musical number goes is he's like singing about playing baseball and he was so into baseball and he would play catch and then he threw too hard. So nobody would play catch with him anymore and he started to fall out of love with baseball. And then his dad had this this mega catching mitt made that was like could withstand his fastball. And then
Yeah.
Jubei and him are playing catch and he's loving baseball again. Oh my gosh. And then we see that Jubei throws the hardest pitch he's ever thrown. His dad can't catch it. The ball goes through his dad's chest, killing him instantly. And that is why Jubei has never, he loves baseball, but he's never played it again. And he never wants to play it again because it's what killed his father.
That's fair. I mean, if I killed my
Of
dad with
course.
a baseball, I probably wouldn't want to play baseball anymore. There's a line in the song that really made me laugh before we kind of understood what it meant, that like the way he threw. It says, by time he entered junior high, no one could catch his pitches, which generally is not what you're looking for from a pitcher. You kind of want people to be able to catch your pitches,
Yeah.
but I guess it's because he threw so hard that
It's just so hard.
no one could catch his pitches. And
Right.
So there's the song Four Eyes, explains my mom also doesn't want me to play baseball, but I do it anyway for the love of the game. And together, you and I, we can let's put away our pasts and our families and let's play baseball together. And there's a great they shake hands, and a thing that happens multiple times in this movie that really made me laugh every time is after a really emotional moment, people come out of nowhere, surround them, and just start clapping. Which,
like 40 people
yeah,
just
like way
circle
more.
them and they just start like clapping very
They're
quickly.
clapping and
Yeah.
very, very like nicely clapping for this
Yes.
emotional moment. So, bingo, bango, Jubei's on the team. There's a chance. So they decide to play Gato High. They've got Jubei Baseball on the team because at one point he says his name is Jubei Baseball, which is really funny. But or maybe it's just bad subtitles. I don't know. But
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, no
yeah,
way his last name is baseball, but
baseball. I know, but it's
yeah.
it's in there. So all we have is the source material, Ben. We have
Yeah.
to go by. And so they've got Jubei. Spirits are high, and they go to the
Well,
to the yeah.
I think the principle is his existential crisis about his entire team dying. He's now like, no, we must stop them because they're killing every team. Guido High, they have plans of taking on the majors and then the world. So the
Yeah,
principal's concern is that Guido High is going to kill his team, and then they're going to kill another team, and then they're going to kill enough teams that they get to the majors, and then once they get to the majors, they're going to kill everyone.
they're gonna kill everyone, and
The
eventually,
existence of all life on Earth is at stake here.
which is a noble cause to rally together. And he was originally going to give up and just bow out, but now they've got
Yeah.
Jubei, so they think they can. They think they can stop him. It really does change into this they do want to get to what's the stadium? Uh,
Machine Stadium Tournament.
Yeah, they want to get to that tournament, but moreover, they want to save the world by beating Gato High,
Yeah.
which is a noble cause and great for a movie like this. So they then so now it's up. Now it's game time,
Baseball's
baby.
happening. Yeah. The
Baseball's
stage is
happening.
set. Yeah.
The stage is set, and we get our first look at Guido High's team. Four Eyes has been separated from the group. Jubei hasn't shown up yet, so Four Eyes goes to look for him, and a dump truck.
And gets run over by
He
their
gets
car.
he
Yeah.
gets hit by a car, which is awesome.
Uh,
And it's like a dump truck, and they all pull up. The back of the dump truck opens up, and a real like the Warriors or Mad Max, like this wild gang of people all get out of the car in very interesting and different ways. Like definitely a choreographed moment where
yes.
two guys on each side jump over the railings. One guy, my favorite guy, just rolls like sideways like a kid rolling down a hill, but he just rolls across the entire bed of the truck and then jumps up and jumps out of the car. All this happens in the same moment, and they are um well, they're zombies. Their faces
They're
are
zombies. Their
yeah,
their faces are like a gray green.
but
Some of them have like parts falling off of them. They're
it
like,
reminded me of The Mask though from
yes.
that Jim Carrey movie, The Mask. That, but like a grayer green, is like,
Yes. They
and they're
look like
all
claymation characters, but
yeah,
they're
they
not.
do, and they're all wearing like torn up jackets, a lot of khaki.
Yeah.
The one
Not
guy,
baseball uniforms.
not baseball uniforms at all. One guy has his head entirely wrapped in
And
like mummy style cloth.
and the only way he can talk is by jamming a cable into his throat, like into his skin. It seems like he's stabbing
Yeah,
himself.
it's
It's
awesome.
grotesque.
And they like start to threaten to kill Four Eyes.
Yeah.
And then the head coach of the team comes out. He grabs the dude who was like the one who has to talk through the microphone and was threatening Four Eyes the most. he grabs him and says like, no, we don't do this here, because if you do this, then like it's against the law.
Yeah.
We do it on the field. And then he bites the ear off of the guy
Of
who's
his own
of his
player.
own player. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some more back and
But
forth
but
and
it's just the legal precedent is just do it in 20 minutes when the game starts. That's
do
I'm
it on
not
the
worried about
field.
what you're doing. Yeah, just do
No,
it on the
yeah.
field.
The problem isn't that you're about to kill this tiny man. It's that you
Yeah,
were gonna do it off of the baseball field. And but Jubei's not showing up. We find out with no further explanation, which again is where people who are watching this movie with an eye for actual substance had a problem with it, but I certainly
sure.
didn't.
No.
Is that Jubei has been locked up in prison? We don't know
He's
why.
from the wrong side of the tracks, Nate.
Yeah,
This
we'll
happens
never
all the
know why.
time. No.
It's never explained. He's locked up in prison, so he can't go
Free
to the game.
Jubei. Free Jubei.
Yeah, and the team's freaking out, but they're there, so they have to play, and the game starts, and we get like the whole thing is just seen through the lens of some cheerleaders, these three cheerleaders, this old man with a adorable white dog, which I think
They
was
have
like a Shiba
they have
Inu or something like that.
one fan. There's
Yeah,
one fan at this game, and he's a drunk guy that's sitting on like a house or something like that, or
like
maybe
a
he's on the
shed.
stands. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then three cheerleaders come out of nowhere. And yeah, one other thing I want to point out before the game start, they're all kind of lined up. There's clearly only 5 people on each side, which they don't address. But the umpire says, "Okay, you guys know the rules. There are no rules." And then they have this big dramatic thing, and the umpire very quietly goes, "Play ball." And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
super understated, and this whole movie is like amplified to 11, and the umpire just like whispers play ball.
Well, the
um
umpire is a very funny character because he like clearly doesn't want to be there and doesn't want to get killed either. So
yeah,
that's part of how they justify it, is that like they basically threaten the umpire to let it all happen or else they're going to kill him. And
right,
since the game is sanctioned by an umpire, then it's cool. It's in the rules of
that's the
baseball.
game. Yeah.
Yep. And which I guess is kind of true, but I just
I guess.
I love the idea of like you go to a game and like the other team is just plays the game by a completely different set of rules,
Yeah,
and you just have to play that. I
yeah,
guess it's kind of like the AL and the NL, back when there was DH and no DH. It's like, yeah, well, when you play Guido, it's a fight to the death. But when you play
yeah.
Saito, you play 9 innings, with 3 outs on each side. And,
Yeah, no, it's a 1-to-1 comparison. I'm surprised
so,
MLB Rob Manfred's not already adopting this.
right. So without Jubei, Saito gets destroyed. Body parts
Murdered.
everywhere. Yeah,
Murdered.
murdered. My favorite little detail is that you see the scoreboard, and up on the
Oh,
scoreboard,
yes.
like pinned to the scoreboard, are humans in baseball jerseys, and like it's in order. Like inning number one has someone
One,
with the
two,
number
three. Yeah.
one on their jersey pinned to the wall. Number two, three, four, five, all the way up, which is really funny.
Um,
That's where we got the scene from the trailer with Gorilla in with bats through
to
his body.
Well, I gotta correct you on this. That's Bancho,
Oh, it
and
is
what
Banjo.
what we totally missed, 'cause this is really, really good, is that Bancho died and then came back to life in another form with a
Oh, right.
different body and a different face, but the same blonde hair, and says,
Yeah.
"Your punch healed my shoulder. That's why I hated baseball. I am now back. I will play with Saito." So we meet Bancho. It's a completely different actor, but it's the
Right.
same person. And then when Jubei walks up, Jubei gets out of jail somehow,
Well,
and
he bends the bars.
he bends the bars and escapes because he has to get to this game. And he walks up, and Bancho goes, "Hey," and he's got like 8 to 9 bats coming out of him. And Jubei is kind of looking at Bancho like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" Bancho falls down dead, and then he looks to the dugout, and Four Eyes is standing in the dugout with a bunch of like nails in his face.
I couldn't tell what they were. It looked like nails or like chopsticks or something. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like really horrible things sticking out of his face.
But before he realizes that that is Four Eyes, I'm skipping over because this is where the movie just gets absolutely insane. It's all
Yeah,
been pretty mellow up into this point.
it's made a
But
lot of sense up to this point.
But before he looks over and see Four Eyes in the dugout, he thinks that Four Eyes is impaled on a massive stake in the middle of the diamond. He runs up to go check on him. He realizes too late that this is a decoy. Four Eyes yells at him with said pins in his face. Jubei starts to run away, and the dummy explodes, sending Jubei flying to the outfield
Like across the ground, like
like a hard grounder.
yeah, flying across the ground up against the back wall of the outfield. And then
And he flies all the way to the outfield, and then a hole opens up, and he goes to the afterlife, and then
and well, and a tombstone pops up
and
that
a
says
tombstone
Jubei
pops up.
with the year of his birth and death, and he goes to
Yes.
the afterlife. It's insane, and it all happens in like 45 seconds.
Yeah,
Um,
it does.
and so Jubei dies, which is of course
Uh,
dramatic.
yeah.
And in the afterlife, he meets his dad who's repairing a bike, which is nice. And basically the dad is like, it's too early for you to be here. You are too young to die. You have something you need to do. Here, take this gigantic glove that I use to catch your pitches and go back and fight Guido High and save the world. And he then punches his way out of the grave, and him and Four Eyes and the remaining survivors of because some people survived, not
He
everybody's dead.
he basically comes out of the ground and says, "This game isn't over yet."
Yeah,
And the team kind of brings themselves together. People who had injuries that I think would kill you and I are now back. I think Bancho has reformed again at this point to have another face and body.
that hasn't happened yet. So
Okay.
they
Bancho dies
leave.
like 4 times.
Yeah, Bancho died, and most of the team died, but a couple people still survived, and they basically leave because they lost. The game's over. It's done. Even though there were a few survivors, like they lost, and so they go back. This is where we get a wonderful scene where Four Eyes gets locked in a cage in his house by his mom because his mom had always said you cannot play baseball. If you do, you don't want to know what's going to happen. And we
And
find out what that is. He's going to be locked in a cage for the rest of his life.
for my money, Four Eyes' mother is the best actor in this movie. She brings it home, is completely unhinged in her performance, and is wearing like a pink muumuu with rollers
Yeah.
and kicks the shit out of everybody. It's
Well,
fantastic.
agree 100%. And so she's railing on Four Eyes for playing baseball, telling him he's going to live the rest of his life in a cage. And Jubei comes in, and Jubei's like, "No, I need Four Eyes. We have to win. We have to save the world. He's a good baseball player. You're a shit mom. You should let him play baseball, and I will fight you for it." And this is where we get the biggest fight scene in the entire movie. Like,
Yes.
this is the longest fight scene out of the whole thing. Is Jubei and this old woman have a full on like choreographed
Yes.
um kung fu movie, martial arts movie tropey fight with like flying spin kicks, being thrown through walls, all these different like it's the longest fight and it's a lot of fun. And Jubei gets the upper hand and he's about to shove a bat through her throat. I suppose we
He
don't really.
threatens to kill her.
Well, he's about to, I think. And then
Yes.
Four Eyes, apparently able to get out of the cage at any moment, opens the
Yeah.
door of the cage and runs out and stops him. And then we get the biggest reveal of the movie, which I knew it.
Yeah.
I hope you believe me because I knew it. We learn that Jubei and Four Eyes are brothers,
Our brothers.
which
And
is hilarious because in all the flashbacks, so the mom doesn't recognize Jubei as her own
yeah,
son, even though in all the flashbacks when Jubei killed his dad,
it's
he's
the
like
same actor
13.
from the day
He's
before.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's like
Yeah.
he looks exactly like he does now.
He's
So this
dressed
mom,
exactly the same.
yeah,
Yeah.
but she tells this whole story about how she had two boys. One of them killed her husband, and they are and he left, and she's
Right.
never seen him again. And oh, it's turned out it's Jubei, and they have a very big emotional scene. They all start crying, and then a bunch of people come in and applaud the
My
emotional scene.
my favorite part about this scene is that then Four Eyes goes and runs and grabs a picture from their childhood, and it is clearly the two actors that are currently playing Four Eyes and Jubei looking like adults in their 30s, and
Yeah,
then two much younger people playing their parents. Like this photo is from so long ago, but it posits that like Four Eyes has had this picture in his house his entire life,
yeah.
has gone to high school with Jubei, and does not know who he is at the same time, even though he has the picture of Jubei. But
And that's the stuff in this movie that makes me like does make me think like they knew what they were doing, right? Like
yeah,
it's a joke. You know,
yeah,
it's not like, oh, this is so stupid, this is so bad, this is so funny. They're playing on the trope of, you know, the two main characters turning out to be brothers, or like the main character ending up being the father of another main character. Like all
yeah.
these tropes that are particularly prevalent in like Japanese like writing and manga and in you know, film and whatnot. That's what it's playing on. But if you're not viewing it through that lens, it's stupid as hell. I mean, it is stupid. It is inherently stupid, but it's purposeful stupidity, which I think
Yeah.
is, you know, different, right? So they all cry and say, "Okay, you can play baseball. Go chase your dream. Go back to these murderers."
Yeah,
And
go fight Guido. Like they're
yeah,
just sending these children in to die by other children.
yeah, it's not even go play baseball. Like they're
The,
not. It's not.
the,
There's
the
never any baseball in this
there is
movie.
zero value on life in this movie. It is just that's how the game goes.
Yeah,
They
well, you know,
shouldn't have died. Yeah.
the rules were stated, you
Yeah.
know, and so they're like, okay, let's get our remaining survivors, but Jubei's with us now, and like we always thought, if we had Jubei, we're good. We don't really
Yeah.
Guido doesn't matter as long as we have Jubei, we're good. So they get Jubei, the principal.
Pancho's back
Um,
now.
well, that comes up in a moment because it's hilarious. So they get their like little group of four or five, the remaining
Yeah.
survivors
The
plus
head
Jubei,
teacher.
the head
Yeah.
teacher, and they go to Jubei's stadium, or to Guido Stadium, which is, you know, all like twisted and
Ah.
weird, you know, like where zombies would play baseball. And they go and they're like, all right, we're here to do this. Let's fight. And um that you've got the three cheerleaders are there, the old man and the dog is there, and the Guido team's like, well, wait, you only have five, you can't play against us, you need a full team. And they're like, oh no, what do we do? And then that's when
Yes.
Bancho, now again a completely different actor, just with blonde
Blonde hair. That is it.
blonde hair, is back, and they're a um well, actually, first, Matsui Gori comes back
Yeah.
as a robot, and he has just like little metal plates all over him, and he does this like every time he moves, they fully in little gizmo sounds, which is
Yeah.
hilarious. So he's a robot, and uh, then Bancho comes back as a cyborg, and
No, no,
then
no. No, Bancho's normal. Headmaster's
okay,
the yeah. There's two
okay.
cyborgs.
Who's the
Bancho comes
cyborg?
back as another character. The head teacher and Gorilla.
Are the
Um,
cyborg and robot?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because the cyborg
Gorilla.
has. Yeah.
Yeah, the head teacher is a cyborg, and Gorilla is a robot
Is
man.
a robot. Yeah. And then
Yes. And
one
they
of the
say,
cheer
thanks to modern technology, I am back
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah. And one of the cheerleaders joins the team, and then
Because she has a crush on Gorilla, I think is what they
yeah,
put
I think
forward.
that's
Yeah.
right. And then
Ladies love Gorilla.
ladies do love Gorilla. And then also their mother joins,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, obvious. She's like a martial arts expert. She held her own against Jubei for quite a while. So
Yeah.
so now they have a full team and they can play. And it, man, the last 20, this is really going to be hard to talk through. So you get we get a fight. One of my favorite moments from this scene though is that they when they're like setting the stage for the field, they light all the foul lines on fire. So
Yeah.
you just have like the lines of the baseball field are entirely on fire, which is a really cool little touch for something like this. And you get a bunch of like low budget
Like
funny fight moments, where like one
they're
guy,
swinging and missing by like a foot and a half type thing.
yeah, and then like in the background someone's carrying someone and they're like
Yeah.
flailing, and like it's almost exclusively done for comedy.
Yes.
This like this huge fight that's been built up is done mostly for comedy. And oh man, what happens next? So
Yeah. So
yeah.
everyone, the fight goes down. Pretty much everybody's on the ground, not dead, but they're all beaten and bloodied and they're struggling. And then it kind of pans out and we see Jubei, our hero, and the Guido head coach, all his players on the ground. And he's basically like, this is bullshit. You're going down. You're going down by me. You haven't even seen our best baseball player.
Right.
And they get into this big, as you can imagine, over the top fight where there's lots like Jubei has this like curved baseball bat that he pulls out of nowhere. And the Guido head coach has this baseball bat that is like, I don't know, 8 feet long and made of steel. And every
I
time they make contact with each other, it sounds like a gunshot going off.
I actually just learned while I was sort of doing research on this movie, I learned about a trope that's called hammer space, which is the when people pull stuff out that they never should have been able to carry. So
Yeah.
like him pulling out a gigantic bat like from behind him is
Like
the
it's in his
is
back pocket.
yeah, and I mean it's like the GTA meme and like any video game basically where
Yeah.
like you just carry like an insane amount of shit with you all the time. But it happens in films too. They call it hammer space, which I guess is you're just like pulling it from hammer space from the
Yeah.
plane of hammers.
Yeah.
Uh, and anyway, I thought that was interesting. So yeah, they have an epic fight. We didn't mention that um, Jubei never really knew how or why he killed his dad. He just knew that he threw a particular pitch really, really effectively, and it went
Yeah.
right through his dad. And when he went back to his dad, he learned that it was called Jubei tornado pitch, and the
Yes.
and the key is that he has to spin a bunch before he throws it.
Yes.
So he does the Jubei tornado pitch, ultimately knocking down the head coach. Um, but then the head
No, no,
coach.
no. No, yeah, you're missing you're getting so this part's really confusing.
I know
So
there's so
so
much here.
first what happens is that Jubei gets felled by Guido's head coach. And then Guido's head coach pulls out this baseball bat that is a metal baseball bat that has a poison in it. And it has poison and herbs all around the world. And it has a massive syringe on the end of it. And all the poisons and all the herbs from around the world force you to live for 100 years after you get shot by it, but you're in constant agony the entire 100 years. So it forces
Yeah.
you to be alive, but you live in pain. Guido head coach comes down to stab him, and Four Eyes jumps in front of the needle and it cuts out, and we see that Four Eyes gets stabbed in the butt.
right in the center of
while
the butt.
while
Yeah.
he's laying on top of Jubei, and Jubei goes, "Isn't that supposed to hurt?" And he looks down and sees that, that Four Eyes has blocked it for him, and the Gedo head coach is not happy about this at all.
Well, it's so funny too because the like bat has a syringe in it and it has a part cut out of it so you can see the amount of liquid that's in it and
Yeah,
as he's like pushing in the plunger of the syringe, we're seeing the plunger go through on the inside of the bat and like pushing all the liquid in. And that's like not a quick moment. It's like multiple seconds on screen of the Guido head coach like pushing down the plunger on this syringe. But we're supposed to like believe that both Jubei and the Guido head coach had not realized that Four Eyes had jumped in the way until it was all the way done.
Uh,
Also, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, be, um, before he before this happens, the Guido head coach yells, he's like, "I've got a special weapon just for this." And he said, and he calls out, he calls him the mechanic. He yells, "Mechanic, bring me my weapon." And from like really far back in frame is a guy
yes,
with like a dolly with like a case on the
with like
dolly
squeaky wheels. Yeah,
with squeaky wheels over rough terrain. And we watch the entire time of this guy pushing this dolly across the field. And it's not a short amount of time. It's like, it's clearly done for comedy, but it's really funny. It's one
it
of the
was the
funniest
funniest
moments.
part of. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
my biggest laugh for sure.
it's not the funniest part of the movie. We have to
Yeah.
me yet. We haven't gotten to the funniest part of the movie yet,
Okay.
but it's probably number 2 because
Yeah.
it just the pace up to this point in the film had been uh sporadic and insane, like all
Breakneck.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like people are blowing up and dying left and right. And then we get a full scene of this guy pushing this little dolly. And you can tell it's kind of a struggle too. Like
Yeah.
he kind of like loses control of it a couple times and it's really, really funny. So
Yeah.
anyway, so he stabs Four Eyes.
Yes.
Four Eyes
Jubei's
goes down.
mad. Yeah, Jubei gets mad. He leaps up, attacks the coach, basically destroys him immediately. And he's getting ready to throw the Jubei tornado pitch. And before he does, a bunch of the Guido players basically crawl up to Jubei and say, "No, please don't do this. Please don't do this." And he says, "Why? He's an asshole. He's an asshole to you. He's an asshole to everybody." And they say how he rescued the team from orphanages and became like a father to them. But they say it in a way they're like, we know he abuses us, we know he's not mean to us, but at least he gives us a purpose. And their purpose is to kill other people. And
Yeah.
they're like, don't
He
kill
said
him.
they said he used us and they meant it in a positive light. They were
Yes.
happy to have a purpose. Yeah, and it's in this moment that the movie like sort of briefly turns into like a weird little PSA where
Yeah.
Jubei gives this huge speech about like caring for your team and like caring for your brothers and like coming together and
Yeah.
like baseball is a team sport. No one person can win it all and like it's like
Even though Jubei just won all of it for
yeah.
Saito.
Well,
But yeah.
it's like it's the only time in the movie that it felt like they ever were trying to say anything.
Yeah.
And I think it is, of course, playing on the trope of,
Yeah.
the emotional, climax and whatnot. But it really came out
Yeah.
of nowhere. It really just have Jubei speak for that long too.
Yeah. Yeah, so they it works. What they say works. Jubei, he makes his big speech. He allows the coach to live. The frame cuts, and then it cuts back to the Guido head coach, and all of his prosthetic makeup is gone. His face is still green, but his face looks completely different. The crowd that has been gathering at all the emotional moments in the movie, they all begin to gather around. And the head coach is saying, "Jubei, I understand. Here's an antidote for the poison for Four Eyes. Let's let bygones be bygones. Let's call this off, and we don't need anyone else to die. As he's having that conversation, the crowd starts to gather around. The Guido player who got his ear bitten off and who has to shove the electronics into his neck to talk pulls out two Uzis, shoots shoots the Guido head coach in the head, and then begins to spray the entire crowd, missing
Everyone.
only Jubei, but
Yeah.
kills everybody.
Well, Jubei
Every
does a
single
bunch of
person that's there.
flips. Jubei
Yes.
does some flips and tricks and stuff to get out of it. He doesn't kill everybody, but he does kill the umpire. Suddenly has two small boys.
He killed them both, and the umpire goes, "I told you not to come."
I told you not to come. He's holding two dead children,
Oh my
crying to the
God.
sky about his two boys. He told them not to come. So, like, people are dead everywhere, screaming and crying. And is that when Jubei starts to cry himself, or
So
is it?
Jubei is looking around at the carnage, and he sheds a tear, starts to come down his eye, and cherry blossoms start falling all around. Again,
it's
out of
it's
absolutely nowhere. And
it's
everyone on the field starts to return to life, including the head coach who got shot in the head only moments ago. The
and he,
children
he
come back.
he peels off a blood sticker from his head. Like, it was like
Yes.
the gunshot that was on his head. He just like reaches up and like pulls it off. And he's I think it's supposed to be like he's wiping the blood off his head, but it
Yeah.
basically just looks like he's peeling off like a blood decal, and everyone's back alive. Jubei's tears
Yeah.
brought
That
brought everyone back to life.
and he like conservatively like 50 people died and they all just came right
Yeah.
back. So he's looking around, everybody's starting to come back together and get back to life. And Jubei, obviously unhappy, attacks the bandage bad guy. And how would you describe what Jubei does to this
Kicks knocks his skeleton out of himself.
Yes.
It's another one of those quick cuts, like Bancho getting his clothes knocked off, or Jubei being knocked into a grave. It all happens in like four really quick frame cuts.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to tell exactly what happened. But
Yeah.
at one point, the dude's full skeleton was exposed, and then and then he uppercuts him into space.
Yeah. There you go.
He Team Rocket, blasting off again.
Yes.
He boots the skeleton into space. And that Guido High is they're not going to do it anymore.
No.
Battlefield Baseball is over. And there's another big round of applause. And
All the dead people are now alive and clapping.
they're all good. Everyone's clapping. And then we get a slow pan. There'd been a narrator through a lot of this whole thing.
Yes.
And then we get a slow pan over, and the narrator saying there was one person who did not survive this the events of today, and that
Yeah.
was my master, who died of alcoholism. And it's the old man who had been at every game, and he's dead with the dog. And that is where we learn that the narrator of the whole movie was the dog.
Yeah.
And that was the funniest joke of the movie to
That
me.
was really good. Yeah, the dog just kind of sitting there and tilts its head next to a guy who is clearly breathing, by the way. I don't know if you
Yeah,
noticed that,
yeah,
but the
yeah.
guy who's dead laying next to an extra large beer bottle. Yeah. And then roll credits.
Roll
That's the
credits.
movie. Yeah.
The YouTube version also has like a weird ramen story at the end. I don't know if you watched that, but I don't really know what it was. But there's like a short film at the end of this that's like 6 minutes
Oh,
long.
I did
That's
not make it to the ramen movie. No.
like a weird little ramen thing that has nothing to do with the Battlefield Baseball. But anyway, incredible film. I there was a whole other song that we didn't talk about. I mean, there's so much
Oh,
stuff that we didn't talk about.
honestly, we went longer on it than I planned to, and we still missed like half the movie. I could not if any part of that sounded interesting to you, I highly recommend. It goes by super duper quick, super entertaining. Jubei is great. You're gonna love him from the second he's on screen. Yeah, I am pro this movie. Battlefield Baseball Forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like our lives are different now that we've watched this
Yeah, it's
movie.
pre BB and post BB.
Yeah, PBB and PBB. Well, I think I definitely could spend another hour or 2 or 3. I think we're gonna be talking about this movie for the rest of our lives, but,
I know.
for the sake of this show and for the sake of our listeners, we actually had, like, an agenda for after we got done talking about the movie, but we should have seen this coming. We're not gonna go back into actual baseball right now. We're actually going to just call it here. We're at like we're right around our normal runtime on an episode. So not like there's a lot of big news anyway. So we'll be back next week with another episode. We'll touch on some of the broader league news that we were
Yeah.
gonna talk about. And we'll do maybe we'll do an extra game or something next week. But I think we got to call this now. I don't think I
Yeah.
can talk about anything else than other than Battlefield Baseball for the rest of at least for the rest of the evening. So we want to thank
Yeah.
everybody for listening.
One other note, the only note that I didn't really get to say that I want to hit really quick is that about 70% of all the dialogue in this movie is screamed at the highest possible volume. Which is just adds to the insanity is when the head teacher walks into the office and he tells him what's going on, but he is screaming at the top of his lungs as if he is like under torture.
Yeah.
Yeah, there again, like you said, there's like 50 other things that I'd like to hit on. But yeah, this is a good place to end it. I will a little spoiler alert, updating on the Faz draft. Ben is currently winning. But there's a lot of players still
Barely.
out there, so we'll see what
Barely.
happens. But yeah, go watch
I'm
Battlefield Baseball.
gonna end it on a quote from this movie. No, but my dad told me to throw it 10 minutes ago when I was dead. So we will be back next week. Happy New Year's, everybody. If you enjoyed this, please let us know. And if not, don't tell us because we had a great time doing it. So, and until next week, Happy New Year's. Go Cardinals.
Ladies love Gorilla.
Nate loved Gorilla.
Talking about